When my son Marcus looked me straight in the eye and said, "Let's see if you survive without me, Mom." Before slamming the door on his way out, I stood there in my empty kitchen feeling something break inside me that would never heal the same way again. He thought he was leaving me helpless, a 72-year-old widow with nothing but this old house and fading memories. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that 3 weeks earlier, I had received a letter from a law firm in Switzerland informing me that my late Uncle Bernard, whom I hadn't seen in 40 years, had left me his entire fortune, $500 million. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I smiled, picked up the phone, and made 3 calls that would change everything. By the time Marcus realized what I had done, it was already too late for him to do anything about it. Before I continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 weeks before that door slammed in my face. I was sitting in my living room, the same floral couch I'd had for 20 years, when the doorbell rang. A courier in a crisp uniform handed me a thick envelope with foreign stamps and a wax seal. My hands trembled as I signed for it. Not because I knew what was inside, but because nobody sends letters like that unless something massive has happened. I sat down, made myself a cup of tea, and opened it with my late husband's letter opener, the silver one he got from his father. The letter was from Hoffman and Associates, a law firm in Zurich. "Dear Mrs. Dorothy Chandler," it began in elegant script, "we regret to inform you of the passing of your uncle, Bernard Fitzgerald, on March 15th of this year." I hadn't thought about Uncle Bernard in decades. He was my mother's brother, the one who left America in the 1970s to make his fortune in Europe and never looked back. At family gatherings, his name was whispered with a mix of admiration and resentment. He had disappeared into a world none of us could reach, sending only occasional Christmas cards with no return address. But what came next made me drop my teacup. As the sole surviving heir named in his will, you are the recipient of his entire estate, valued at approximately $500,000 USD. $500 million. I read it 3 times, then 5 more. Then I called the number on the letterhead, certain this was some elaborate scam. But the woman who answered spoke with such professional courtesy, providing verification codes and estate documents, that I realized it was real. Uncle Bernard, the family ghost, had left everything to me. The firm explained I needed to travel to Switzerland within 60 days to claim the inheritance and sign the necessary documents. They would arrange everything: first-class flights, hotel accommodations, legal representation. All I had to do was say yes. I hung up that phone and sat in complete silence for 2 hours, my mind racing through 1,000 thoughts. My first instinct was to call Marcus and tell him. My son, my only child, the person I'd sacrificed everything for since his father died 15 years ago, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the conversation we'd had the week before, when he'd come over with his wife Jennifer to discuss my situation. They sat across from me at this very kitchen table, and Marcus had said with barely concealed impatience, "Mom, you're 72. This house is too big for you. You can barely keep up with it. We think it's time you moved into Sunset Gardens." That was the assisted living facility on the edge of town, the one with the sad cafeteria and the smell of disinfectant in every hallway. Jennifer had nodded enthusiastically, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the table. "It would be so much better for you, Dorothy. You'd have people to talk to, activities, nurses on call. And honestly, Marcus and I could really use this house. We're bursting at the seams in our place, and with the kids getting older, we need more room." I'd looked at my son then, really looked at him, and saw nothing of the boy I'd raised. This was a stranger wearing my son's face, calculating the value of my home while I was still living in it. I'd told them no. Firmly, clearly, no. This was my house, the one my husband and I bought 40 years ago, where we raised Marcus, where every corner held a memory. I wasn't going anywhere. Marcus had stood up then, his face reddening. "You're being stubborn and selfish, Mom. We're trying to help you, but you're too proud to see it." Jennifer had touched his arm, playing the peacemaker. but her eyes were cold. "Let's give her some time to think about it," she'd said sweetly. They left without hugging me goodbye. So no, I didn't call Marcus about the inheritance. Instead, I sat with this secret, this impossible fortune, and watched how my son treated me over the next 3 weeks. He called twice, both times about the house. "Have you reconsidered?" he'd ask. Not, "How are you?" or "Do you need anything?" Just straight to what he wanted. The 3rd week, he showed up unannounced with a real estate agent. Can you imagine? A real estate agent walking through my home, taking measurements, making notes, while I stood there in shock. "Marcus, what is this?" I'd asked, my voice shaking. He'd put his arm around my shoulders in that condescending way people do when they're about to bulldoze your life. "Mom, I already talked to Sunset Gardens. They have a nice room available next month. We need to move fast on this house while the market's good. Jennifer and I found a buyer who's very interested. They're offering $340,000, which is excellent." He'd said it like he was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful he was dismantling my entire life so efficiently. That's when something inside me turned to ice. I smiled at the real estate agent and said, "I'm sorry, but there's been a misunderstanding. My house is not for sale." Marcus's face went white, then red. He asked the agent to wait outside, and the moment that door closed, he exploded. "What is wrong with you? You can't live here alone anymore. You're going to fall, or forget to turn off the stove, or God knows what. We're trying to take care of you, and you're fighting us every step of the way." "I'm fighting you because I don't need taking care of," I'd said quietly. "I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home." Jennifer, who'd been silent until then, finally spoke up. "Dorothy, be realistic. You're living on what? Social Security? Maybe a small pension from Robert? How are you going to afford repairs when the roof needs replacing? Or the furnace breaks? Marcus and I can't keep supporting you financially." Supporting me financially? They'd given me $200 last Christmas, and Marcus had mentioned it at least 5 times since. The argument escalated until Marcus said something I'll never forget. "You know what, Mom? Maybe you need to learn the hard way. Maybe you need to try surviving on your own and see how long you last." His voice was cruel, calculated. "We're done helping someone who doesn't appreciate it. Don't call us when you can't pay your electric bill or when you need a ride to the doctor. You want to be independent? Fine. Let's see if you survive without me." And that's when he walked out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Jennifer scurried after him, throwing me one last look that was equal parts pity and satisfaction. I heard their car start, heard them drive away, and I stood in my kitchen feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. Except it hadn't, because I had a secret. I had $500 million waiting for me in Switzerland, and I had a plan forming in my mind, clear as crystal. I walked to my bedroom and took out the letter from Zurich. I read it again, this time with different eyes. This wasn't just money. This was power. This was the ability to show my son exactly what kind of mother he'd just thrown away. I picked up my phone and called the first number. "Yes, hello. This is Dorothy Chandler. I'd like to accept my inheritance and begin the process immediately." The lawyer on the other end sounded pleased. "Excellent, Mrs. Chandler. We'll arrange everything. Can you travel next week?" The second call was to my old friend Patricia, the only person in this world I trusted completely. We'd been friends since high school, through marriages and children and widowhood. "Patricia," I said when she answered, "I need your help with something, and I need you to keep it absolutely secret." She'd heard the tone in my voice and said simply, "I'm listening." I told her everything. The inheritance, Marcus's behavior, my plan. When I finished, there was silence. Then she started laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind of laughter that says, "It's about time." "Dorothy Chandler," she said, "I've been waiting 30 years for you to stand up to that boy. What do you need me to do?" I explained that I needed her to watch my house while I went to Switzerland, to tell anyone who asked that I was visiting a cousin in Florida, to keep everything normal. "Consider it done," she said. "But Dorothy, promise me something. Don't go easy on him. He deserves whatever's coming." I promised her I wouldn't. And I meant it. The third call was the most important one. I dialed the number for Sunset Gardens. the assisted living facility Marcus wanted to warehouse me in. When the director answered, I said, "Hello, this is Dorothy Chandler. I understand my son Marcus has been inquiring about rooms for me." She confirmed, saying they had a lovely room reserved. All I needed to do was sign the papers and pay the deposit. "I see," I said. "Well, I'm calling to inform you that I won't be needing that room. However, I would like to make a substantial donation to your facility. Would $5 million be helpful?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, "Mrs. Chandler, yes, that would be. Are you serious?" I was dead serious. I explained that the donation would come with conditions. First, they would call Marcus and tell him his mother had declined their services and ask that he not contact them again on her behalf. Second, they would use the money to create a fund for elderly residents whose families had abandoned them, people who needed a place to live but whose children didn't care enough to help. She agreed immediately, probably thinking I was senile but rich. I hung up that phone and felt something I hadn't felt in years: power, control, the ability to make decisions about my own life without asking permission or apologizing for existing. I made myself dinner that night. A real dinner. Not the sad sandwich I'd been eating while worrying about Marcus's approval. I poured myself a glass of the good wine I'd been saving, and I toasted to Uncle Bernard, wherever he was, for giving me the greatest gift he possibly could have. Not just money, but freedom. The next morning, I packed my bags for Switzerland. Patricia came over to get my house key and the instructions for taking care of my plants. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You look different, Dorothy. Younger somehow." I smiled at her. "I feel different. I feel like I've been asleep for years and I'm finally waking up." She hugged me tight and whispered, "Go get your fortune, and then come back and show that boy of yours what a real woman looks like." The flight to Zurich was first class, just like the lawyers had promised. I'd never flown first class in my life. They gave me champagne and warm towels and a seat that turned into a bed. I slept better on that plane than I had in months. When I landed, a driver was waiting with my name on a sign. He took me to a hotel that looked like something from a movie, all marble and crystal chandeliers. The suite they'd reserved had a view of the lake and was bigger than my entire first floor at home. The meeting with the lawyers took 3 days. Papers to sign, accounts to review, investments to understand. Uncle Bernard had been even wealthier than the initial letter suggested. Between properties, stocks, bonds, and cash, the estate was worth closer to $520,000. The lawyers explained that Uncle Bernard had built his fortune in pharmaceuticals and real estate and had been incredibly shrewd about diversifying his investments. He'd never married, never had children, and had apparently followed my life from afar through private investigators. "He left a letter for you," the senior lawyer said on the third day, handing me an envelope with my name written in shaky handwriting. I opened it alone in my hotel room that night. "Dear Dorothy," it read, "you probably don't remember me very well. I was the uncle who missed your wedding and your son's birth, and every important moment of your life. I left because I was chasing something I thought was more important than family. I was wrong. I made my fortune, but I died alone, with no one who cared whether I lived or died. I followed your life through reports, and I saw that you were different. You gave everything to your family. You sacrificed and loved without keeping score. I'm leaving you everything because I hope you'll do something better with it than I did. Don't let anyone make you small. You've been small for too long. It's time to be large. With regret and hope, Uncle Bernard." I cried reading that letter. Cried for Uncle Bernard, who'd realized too late what mattered. Cried for myself, for all the years I'd made myself small to fit into spaces other people designed for me. And cried with relief, because I wasn't going to be small anymore. The next morning, I signed the final papers. The fortune was mine. $520 million, transferred into accounts with my name on them. The lawyers helped me set up trusts, investment portfolios, charitable foundations. By the time I left Switzerland, I wasn't just rich. I was smart rich. I flew back home with a plan so clear it felt like destiny. I didn't tell Marcus I was back. I didn't call him or text him. I just came home, where Patricia was waiting with fresh flowers and a pot of coffee. "So?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Did you get it? Is it real?" I nodded and showed her the documents. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Dorothy! Oh my God! What are you going to do?" I smiled, the same smile I'd been practicing in Switzerland. "I'm going to give Marcus exactly what he asked for," I said. "He wanted to see if I could survive without him. Well, I'm going to show him survival in a way he never imagined." The first week back, I did nothing. Absolutely nothing. I stayed in my house, tended my garden, had tea with Patricia, and lived my quiet life exactly as before. Marcus didn't call. Jennifer didn't text. It was as if they'd erased me from their lives the moment I refused to obey. And that was fine. Perfect, actually. Because while they thought I was sitting here helpless and alone, I was making calls. Calls to lawyers, financial advisors, and one very interesting private investigator named Thomas Reed, who specialized in financial backgrounds. "Mrs. Chandler," Thomas said during our first phone call, "I need you to understand that what you're asking for is completely legal, but it might reveal things you don't want to know about your son." I'd taken a deep breath and said, "Mr. Reed, I need to know everything. His finances, his business dealings, his debts, everything. Can you do that?" He could. And 2 weeks later, he sent me a report that was 3 inches thick. I read it cover to cover, and with each page, my heart broke a little more. But my resolve grew stronger. Marcus was drowning in debt. Not little debts, massive ones. He owed $340,000 on a mortgage for a house worth maybe $280,000 in the current market. Credit card debt of $87,000 spread across 9 different cards. A business loan of $125,000 for a consulting company that existed only on paper and had never made a single dollar. And the worst part? He'd been borrowing money from loan sharks, the kind of people who don't take "I'll pay you next month" as an answer. He owed $65,000 to people who would break his legs if he didn't pay. Jennifer was no better. The report showed she had a secret shopping addiction, designer clothes purchased and hidden in a storage unit Marcus didn't know about. She'd maxed out 3 credit cards in her name alone, another $52,000. She'd even opened cards in Marcus's name without telling him, adding another $31,000 to their debt. Together, they were nearly $700,000 in the hole, and they were sinking faster every month. The late fees alone were killing them. And suddenly, their desperation to get my house made perfect sense. They needed to sell my house to save themselves from bankruptcy. They were going to put me in that depressing assisted living facility, take the $340,000 from my home, pay off enough debt to breathe again, and probably tell themselves they were doing me a favor. My home, the place where I'd raised Marcus and buried my husband's ashes in the garden, was nothing more than a life raft to them. I sat with that report for a long time, feeling something dark and cold settle in my chest. I know what you're thinking right now. Why didn't I just help them? Why didn't I pay off their debts and move on? Stay with me, because you're about to understand why some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The next piece of my plan involved Marcus's employer. The report showed he worked for Henderson and Associates, a mid-level consulting firm. I made some calls through my new financial advisors and discovered something interesting. Henderson and Associates was struggling financially and looking for investors. Their main partner, Gerald Henderson, was 68 and wanting to retire, but couldn't find a buyer. Within a week, through a shell corporation my lawyer set up, I bought Henderson and Associates for $3.2 million. Gerald was thrilled. I was now Marcus's employer, and he had no idea. I didn't make immediate changes. I let Gerald stay on as the public face for a few months while I learned the business. But I also learned everything about Marcus's work performance. He was mediocre at best. He'd had 3 client complaints in the past year. His billable hours were below average. He took long lunches and left early on Fridays. The only reason he still had a job was because Gerald was too nice to fire anyone. But I wasn't Gerald. And I wasn't nice anymore. 2 months after I returned from Switzerland, Marcus finally called. Not to apologize or check on me, to demand, "Mom, I heard you're still living in the house. You need to be reasonable about this. Jennifer and I have been incredibly patient, but we need you to make a decision. Either you sell the house and move into Sunset Gardens, or we're going to have to take legal action. Legal action. Against his own mother. I let the silence stretch out, counting to 10 in my head. Marcus, I said calmly, I'm not selling my house. Not now, not ever. He exploded. The words that came out of his mouth were ugly. Accusations that I was a selfish old woman who'd never appreciated anything he'd done for me, that I was ungrateful and stubborn and making their lives miserable. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finally ran out of steam, I said very quietly, Are you finished? He sputtered something about talking to his lawyer. You do that, I said. And Marcus? Don't call me again unless you're ready to apologize. I hung up on him. It felt magnificent. 3 days later, I got a letter from a lawyer. Marcus was actually doing it. He was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could take control of my finances and property. The letter cited my advanced age, my refusal to accept help, and my irrational attachment to a house I couldn't maintain. It said they had a doctor willing to evaluate me and testify that I needed a guardian. A guardian. My own son wanted to take away my rights as a human being so he could steal my house. I called my lawyers immediately. Can he do this? I asked. They reviewed the letter and laughed. Not polite lawyer laughs. Real, genuine laughter. Mrs. Chandler, the senior partner said, he can try, but he won't succeed. You're of perfectly sound mind. You've just made one of the largest financial transactions in recent history with complete competence. You're managing a multi-million-dollar portfolio. No judge in the world would declare you incompetent. In fact, if he pursues this, we can countersue for harassment and emotional distress. But I had a better idea. Don't do anything yet, I told my lawyers. Let him think he has a chance. Let him spend money on lawyers and doctors and court fees. I want him to dig himself in deeper. They understood immediately. Sometimes the best revenge isn't stopping your enemy. It's giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Over the next month, Marcus spent nearly $15,000 on legal fees trying to build his case. Money he didn't have, borrowed from those dangerous people who were already breathing down his neck. You're probably wondering when I was going to reveal the truth to him. Trust me, that moment was coming. But first, I needed him to understand exactly how far he'd fallen, how much he'd destroyed for nothing. The court date was set for early November. Marcus's lawyer had scheduled a competency hearing, where they'd present their evidence that I was unable to care for myself. They'd lined up a doctor who'd never met me but was willing to say that women my age often suffered from dementia and poor judgment. They had statements from Jennifer about my confusion and memory problems. All lies. All fabricated. They thought they had an airtight case. They thought I'd show up as a confused old woman who couldn't defend herself. Instead, I showed up with 4 lawyers, all from the most prestigious firm in the state. I wore a Chanel suit I'd bought in Switzerland, pearl earrings that cost more than Marcus's car, and I carried a briefcase full of documents. The look on Marcus's face when he saw me walk into that courtroom was worth every penny I'd spent. His cheap lawyer, a man named Robbins who worked out of a strip mall office, physically paled when he saw my legal team. The judge was a woman named Patricia Thornton, 65 years old, sharp as a tack, and famous for not tolerating nonsense. When Marcus's lawyer stood up to present his case, she let him talk for about 3 minutes before holding up her hand. Mr. Robbins, she said, you're trying to tell me that this woman, she gestured to me, who is sitting here in designer clothes, with 4 attorneys from Preston and Associates, is mentally incompetent. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear people breathing. My lead attorney stood up. His name was Richard Preston, and he was legendary. Your Honor, he said smoothly, not only is Mrs. Chandler completely competent, she is in fact one of the most financially astute individuals I've had the pleasure of representing. In the past 3 months, she has successfully claimed and managed an inheritance of over $500 million, made sound investment decisions that have already grown that fortune by 8%, and established 3 charitable foundations. She is sharper than most people half her age. The courtroom erupted. Marcus's face went white, then red, then white again. Jennifer, sitting behind him, grabbed the bench in front of her like she might fall over. The judge banged her gavel. Order! Mr. Robbins, did you have any knowledge of your client's mother's financial situation before filing this petition? Robbins was shaking his head, staring at Marcus like he'd been lied to, which he had been. Your Honor, my client informed me that his mother was living on a fixed income and couldn't afford basic necessities. Your Honor, Richard continued, we have documentation showing that Mrs. Chandler is in excellent mental and physical health. We also have evidence that her son, Mr. Marcus Chandler, is nearly $700,000 in debt and was attempting to force his mother to sell her home to resolve his financial difficulties. This wasn't a case of concerned family care. This was financial exploitation of an elderly parent. He handed a stack of papers to the bailiff, who gave them to Judge Thornton. She read through them, her expression growing darker with each page. When she looked up, her eyes were hard. Mr. Chandler, stand up. Marcus stood on shaky legs. Did you or did you not attempt to coerce your mother into selling her home against her will? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Did you or did you not tell her you would abandon her if she didn't comply with your demands? Still nothing. Did you or did you not bring a real estate agent to her home without her permission? I was trying to help her, Marcus finally managed to say. His voice was weak, pathetic. Judge Thornton leaned forward. By taking her home? By trying to have her declared incompetent? By lying to this court about her mental state? She looked down at more papers. It says here you owe significant money to private lenders. It says your wife has hidden debts. It says you're facing bankruptcy. That sounds like someone desperate for money, not someone concerned about their mother's welfare. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. Not only did she dismiss Marcus's petition with prejudice, meaning he could never file it again, she also ordered him to pay my legal fees. All of them. That was another $47,000 he didn't have. She also issued a restraining order preventing him from contacting me directly for 6 months. Mrs. Chandler, she said, turning to me with something like respect in her eyes, I apologize that you had to go through this. Your son should be ashamed of himself. As we left the courtroom, Marcus tried to approach me. Mom, please, let me explain. My lawyers stepped between us immediately. You heard the judge, Richard said firmly. No contact. I looked at my son over Richard's shoulder. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Jennifer was crying, mascara running down her face. You wanted to see if I could survive without you, I said quietly, so only he could hear. Well, here I am, surviving beautifully. I still wasn't done, not even close, because what came next would teach Marcus the final lesson he needed to learn. That evening, Patricia came over with a bottle of champagne. Dorothy, you magnificent woman, she said, popping the cork. The whole town is talking about what happened in court today. Marcus and Jennifer showed their faces at the grocery store, and people literally turned their backs on them. I poured us each a glass. Good, I said simply. They need to understand what they've done. Patricia clinked her glass against mine. So, what happens now? Are you just going to cut them off forever? I'd been thinking about that question since the moment I found out about the inheritance. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Reconciliation? The truth was messier than any of those words. I want Marcus to understand the value of what he threw away, I told Patricia. Not just money, me, his mother, the person who loved him unconditionally for 46 years. He treated that love like it was worthless, like I was worthless. Patricia nodded, understanding in her eyes. The next phase of my plan began the following Monday. Gerald Henderson officially announced his retirement, and the firm sent out an email introducing the new owner. Me, or rather, the shell corporation I controlled. Marcus read that email at his desk, probably not even paying attention at first. Then he saw the name, Fitzgerald Holdings, LLC. My maiden name was Fitzgerald. It took him about 10 minutes to put it together, and then he was running to his supervisor's office. I was already there, sitting behind what used to be Gerald's desk. When Marcus burst through the door, he stopped dead. Hello, Marcus, I said calmly. I believe we need to have a performance review. He looked like he might be sick. His supervisor, A woman named Carol, whom I'd already met and liked, said awkwardly, "Mr. Chandler. Mrs. Chandler is the new owner of the firm. She's conducting personal reviews of all employees today." Marcus sank into a chair, all the color drained from his face. I opened his personnel file. Let's see. 3 client complaints this year, below average billable hours, multiple instances of leaving early without approval. Marcus, if this was any other employee, what would you recommend? Carol, bless her, played along perfectly. Termination, Mrs. Chandler. This performance is unacceptable. Marcus found his voice. Mom, you can't fire me. I need this job. We can't afford. I held up my hand. I'm not your mom right now. I'm your employer. And you're right. You need this job. So here's what's going to happen. I slid a paper across the desk. This is a performance improvement plan. You will meet every metric on this list. You will be in the office from 8 to 5:30, not a minute less. You will bring in new clients. You will exceed your billable hours by at least 20%. You will do this for 6 months. If you succeed, you keep your job. If you fail even once, you're terminated. No severance, no references, nothing. Marcus stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. You're doing this to punish me, he said, his voice cracking. I'm doing this because it's what any employer would do with an underperforming employee, I corrected. The fact that you're my son is irrelevant in this context. Sign the paper or clean out your desk. Your choice. He signed it. His hand was shaking so badly the signature was barely legible. Carol witnessed it and left the room, giving us a moment of privacy I hadn't asked for. Mom, Marcus said quietly, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was desperate and I made terrible choices. And I know I hurt you. I cut him off. You're not sorry you did it, Marcus. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. That's not the same thing. He opened his mouth to protest, but I continued. You said things to me that can't be unsaid. You tried to take away my home, my autonomy, my dignity. You brought lawyers to court to declare me incompetent. You didn't call to check on me for months. You treated me like garbage. And the only reason you're sorry now is because it didn't work. Tears were running down his face. Real tears this time. Not the manipulative kind. I don't know what happened to me, he whispered. I got so caught up in the debt, in Jennifer's spending, in trying to keep up appearances. I lost sight of everything that mattered. That was the first honest thing I'd heard him say in years. Yes, I agreed. You did. And now you have to find it again. That's not something I can do for you, Marcus. That's work only you can do. I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. I'll see you in 6 months to review your performance. Until then, we have no relationship outside this office. The restraining order stands. If you need to speak with me about work, go through Carol. He stood too, looking lost. Is there any chance, he started, his voice breaking, any chance at all that we can fix this? That you can forgive me? I looked at him for a long moment. I don't know, I said honestly. That depends entirely on what you do next. After he left, I sat alone in the office for a while. Part of me felt powerful, vindicated, strong. But another part, the mother part that never really goes away, just felt sad. Sad for the relationship we'd lost, sad for the man my son had become, sad for the years we'd wasted. Patricia's words echoed in my head. Don't go easy on him. He deserves whatever's coming. But did he? Or had I already done enough? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't backing down. The next blow came from a direction Marcus didn't expect. Jennifer's father, Harold, owned a small chain of hardware stores. Jennifer worked there as a manager, making decent money that she immediately spent on things they couldn't afford. I'd never liked Harold. He'd always been loud and crude. But I respected that he'd built his business from nothing. So I bought it. All 3 stores for $2.3 million. Harold was ready to retire anyway, and my offer was generous enough that he couldn't refuse. Jennifer found out when she came to work Monday morning and found a new sign on the door. Under new management, Fitzgerald Holdings. I arrived at 10 o'clock, walked past her at the register without a word, and went into the manager's office with my operations consultant. We spent 2 hours reviewing inventory, sales reports, and personnel files. Jennifer's file showed the same pattern as Marcus's: mediocre performance, cutting corners, multiple customer complaints about her attitude. When I called her into the office, she was defiant at first. "You can't fire me," she said, arms crossed. "My father sold you this business, but I know more about running it than you ever will." I smiled at her, the same cold smile I'd given Marcus. "You're absolutely right. You do know more about running a hardware store than I do. That's why you're not fired. You're demoted. You're going from manager to sales associate. Your salary is cut by 40%. You'll work weekends and evenings. You'll stock shelves and help customers and clean bathrooms. And you'll do it with a smile." Her face went through the same color changes Marcus's had. "You're insane." "I'm not doing that. I quit." I shrugged. "That's your choice. But I should mention that I've spoken with the other hardware stores in the area. All of them. I've let them know that you're not someone I'd recommend for employment. You're welcome to try to find work elsewhere, but I suspect it will be difficult." It was a bluff. I hadn't actually done that and couldn't legally, but Jennifer didn't know that, and the fear in her eyes told me she believed me. "You're doing this because we tried to take your house," she said, and for the first time, I heard something like understanding in her voice. "I'm doing this because you treated me like I was worthless," I corrected. "You and Marcus both. You saw an old woman who could be bullied and manipulated, and you never once considered that I might have feelings, might have dignity, might have worth beyond what I could provide for you. So yes, Jennifer, this is me showing you exactly what you lost when you decided I wasn't worth basic human respect." She took the demotion. What choice did she have? She and Marcus were drowning, and any income was better than none. I heard later from Carol that the two of them were fighting constantly now, each blaming the other for their situation. Marcus said it was Jennifer's shopping addiction that started it all. Jennifer said it was Marcus's failed business ventures. The truth was, they'd both made terrible choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. I couldn't fix that for them even if I wanted to, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. Now you might be thinking I'm cruel, that I've gone too far, but stay with me, because this story isn't about revenge. It's about something much deeper. 2 months into Marcus's performance plan, Carol called me. "Mrs. Chandler, I need to talk to you about your son." My heart sank. "He's not meeting the metrics?" I asked. "No," she said, and I could hear the surprise in her voice. "He's exceeding them, by a lot. He's brought in 4 new clients this month. His billable hours are 30% above target. He's in the office before anyone else and leaves after most people. And Mrs. Chandler, he's actually good at this. I don't know what changed, but he's become one of our best performers." I didn't know what to say. Part of me was proud. That was my son, finally living up to his potential. But another part was angry. He'd had this capability all along and had chosen not to use it. He'd been mediocre because he could get away with it, because there were no consequences. "Thank you for letting me know, Carol," I said finally. "Please continue monitoring his performance." She agreed, but then added, "Mrs. Chandler, if I may say something personal, I think your son is trying, really trying. Whatever you did, it worked." That night, I sat in my garden, the one where I'd buried Robert's ashes, and thought about what Carol had said. Was this working? Was Marcus actually changing? Or was he just scared of losing his job? How could I know the difference? I pulled out my phone and looked at the blocked messages. Against my better judgment, I unblocked Marcus's number. Immediately, texts started coming through. Dozens of them, sent over the past 2 months. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know I'm trying. I got a new client today. First one in years that I actually earned. Jennifer and I are in counseling. We're trying to fix our marriage and our finances. I wish I could talk to you." The last message was from 3 days ago. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I want you to know that I finally understand. It wasn't about the house or the money. It was about respect. And I didn't give you any. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm working on being the man you raised me to be instead of the man I became. I love you." I read that message 3 times. Then I cried. Real, genuine tears. Not from pain, but from something more complicated. Hope, maybe. Or just exhaustion from carrying all this anger. I didn't respond to the messages. Not yet. But I didn't block his number again either. I was ready to watch, to see if this change was real or just temporary desperation. Because that was the thing about people. They could promise to change, but words were easy. Actions, sustained actions over time, those were what mattered. And I needed to see if Marcus could sustain this, if he could become the person he was claiming to be. The restraining order would expire in 4 more months. That would be my answer. If he was still this person, then maybe we could talk. Maybe. The 4 months passed slower than any time in my life. Every day I woke up wondering if today would be the day Marcus slipped back into his old patterns. The day he'd prove that people don't really change. They just pretend until it's convenient to stop. But every day, Carol's reports came back positive. New clients, exceeded metrics, professional behavior. He was still doing it, still showing up, still trying. And that scared me more than his failures ever had, because it meant I might actually have to decide whether to forgive him. Patricia noticed the change in me. "You're conflicted," she said one afternoon while we had tea in my garden. "You wanted him to suffer, and he did. You wanted him to change, and he is. But now you don't know what to do with that." She was right, as always. "What if it's not real?" I asked her. "What if the moment I let him back in, he reverts to who he was?" Patricia set down her teacup and took my hand. "Dorothy, that's the risk of loving anyone. They can always hurt you again. The question isn't whether he might, it's whether you can live with yourself if you never give him the chance to prove he's different." The restraining order expired on March 15th. I woke up that morning with a knot in my stomach, wondering if Marcus would show up at my door immediately, demanding reconciliation. But he didn't. The day passed quietly. Then the next day. And the next. A week went by with no contact. That's when I realized something had shifted. The old Marcus would have been at my door the moment he legally could, pushing his agenda, demanding forgiveness on his timeline. This Marcus was waiting, giving me space, respecting my boundaries even when there was no legal requirement to do so. 2 weeks after the order expired, I decided to go to his office. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I just walked into Henderson and Associates at 3 in the afternoon and asked Carol if Marcus was available. Her eyes widened. "Mrs. Chandler, yes, he's with a client right now, but they should be finishing up soon. Would you like to wait in your office?" I shook my head. "I'll wait here." I sat in the lobby and watched through the glass walls as Marcus presented something to a middle-aged couple, his posture confident but not arrogant, his smile genuine. When the clients left, looking satisfied, Marcus turned and saw me. Our eyes met through the glass. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked out slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a deer that might bolt at any sudden movement. "Mom," he said quietly. Just that one word. I stood up. "I want to talk," I said. "Can we go somewhere private?" He nodded and led me to a small conference room, closing the door behind us. We sat across from each other at the table, the same way we'd sat in this building months ago when I'd put him on the performance plan. "You've been doing well?" I said. It wasn't a question. "I have," he replied. "Carol says you've exceeded every metric, brought in significant new business. Haven't missed a single day or deadline." He nodded again. "That's all true." I leaned forward. "Why, Marcus? Why now? Why not a year ago or 5 years ago, when it might have prevented all of this?" He took a deep breath, and I could see him gathering his thoughts, choosing his words carefully. This was different from before. Before, he would have jumped in with excuses and deflections. "Because I didn't have to," he said finally. "That's the honest answer, Mom. I could coast and nothing bad happened. Dad's life insurance paid off the house years ago. Jennifer had her job. I had mine. We lived above our means, but there was always a credit card or a loan or you to bail us out. I never had to face the consequences of being mediocre because someone was always there to catch me. And when the debt got too bad, I looked around for the easiest solution. That was your house. His voice cracked on the last word. I convinced myself I was helping you, he continued, that you were too old to live alone, that we were doing you a favor by forcing you into that facility. But the truth is, I knew. Somewhere deep down, I knew exactly what I was doing. I was sacrificing you to save myself. And I told myself it was okay because you were my mother. And mothers are supposed to sacrifice for their children. I had it backwards. I'm 46 years old. You'd already done your sacrificing. It was my turn, and I was too selfish to see it. I sat with his words, turning them over in my mind. And the competency hearing? I asked. That wasn't just desperation. That was cruelty, Marcus. You were going to take away my rights as a human being. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were filled with tears. I know. That's the part I can't forgive myself for. Jennifer kept saying we had no choice, that we were going to lose everything, and I let that panic override everything else, including my love for you, including basic human decency. Jennifer, I said, how is she handling all of this? Marcus's expression darkened. We're separated. Have been for 6 weeks now. She refused to accept any responsibility for what we did. She kept blaming you, saying you were vindictive and cruel for buying my company and her father's stores. She couldn't see that we'd brought it on ourselves. The counseling didn't work. She moved in with her sister. He paused. I think the marriage was over long before this. We were just two people drowning together, pulling each other under instead of helping each other swim. I hadn't expected that. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Whatever Jennifer's faults, watching a marriage end was always sad. Marcus shook his head. Don't be. It was one of the healthier decisions I've made. We were toxic together. We enabled each other's worst impulses. Being alone, having to face my failures without someone to share the blame with, that's what I needed. He wiped his eyes. I'm seeing a therapist now. Real therapy, not marriage counseling. Dealing with the debt, the lying to myself, the entitlement. It's hard work, harder than anything I've done before. How's the debt? I asked. It felt strange asking, but I needed to know if he'd found another way to avoid responsibility. I'm managing it, he said. I sold everything we didn't absolutely need. The boat we never used, the second car, Jennifer's designer clothes that were still in storage. I consolidated the credit cards into one payment plan. I'm working with a financial counselor to create a budget and stick to it. The loan sharks got paid off first. That was non-negotiable. The rest will take years, but I'm handling it. Myself. Without asking anyone for help. That answer meant more to me than anything else he could have said. I'm proud of you, I heard myself say. Marcus looked up sharply, as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. You are? I nodded. It would have been easy for you to declare bankruptcy, to walk away from it all and start over. But you're facing it. You're taking responsibility. That takes courage. He started crying then, really crying, his shoulders shaking. I don't deserve your pride, Mom. I don't deserve anything from you after what I did. I moved around the table and sat beside him. I didn't touch him yet. That felt like too much too soon. But I was close enough that he could feel my presence. Marcus, I need you to understand something. What you did was unforgivable. Those actions, those words, that cruelty, I can't forgive that. It's too big, too painful. He nodded, accepting it. But, I continued, I can forgive who you're becoming. I can forgive the man who's working every day to be better. Do you understand the difference? He looked at me. Confusion and hope mixed in his expression. I think so, he said slowly. You can't forget what happened, but you can accept that I'm different now? I considered it. I don't know if you're different yet. I know you're trying to be different. That's what I can work with. That's what gives me hope. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus asked the question I'd been waiting for. Can we start over? Not pretend the past didn't happen, but build something new from here? I thought about Uncle Bernard's letter, about how he'd realized too late what mattered. I thought about Robert, buried in my garden, who would want me to give our son a chance. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, small and scared and letting people walk over her. And I thought about who I was now, strong, independent, nobody's victim. We can try, I said finally. But Marcus, this isn't about money. I'm not giving you a penny to solve your debt. I'm not buying you a house or a car or making your life easier. If we rebuild this relationship, it's going to be on the foundation of respect, not resources. I don't want your money, Mom, he said firmly. I don't want anything except the chance to be your son again, to have coffee with you on Sunday mornings, to call you just to talk, to be someone you're proud of instead of someone you're ashamed of. Those words broke something open in my chest. Then we'll start there, I said. Sunday mornings, coffee, we'll talk. We'll see where it goes. He nodded, wiping his face. Can I hug you? He asked hesitantly. I stood up and opened my arms. When he hugged me, he felt different. Smaller, humbler, less like the entitled man who'd slammed my door and more like the boy I'd raised. Over the next 3 months, we rebuilt slowly. Sunday coffee became Sunday brunch. One conversation a week became 3. We talked about everything. His therapy sessions, my charity work with the foundations, his struggles with the debt, my struggles with trust. Patricia joined us sometimes, and I could see her evaluating Marcus, looking for signs of the old patterns. But they didn't come. He showed up when he said he would. He listened more than he talked. He asked about my life with genuine interest, not performative concern. One Sunday in June, Marcus brought someone with him. Mom, this is Rebecca, he said, introducing a woman about his age with kind eyes and a warm smile. We met at a financial literacy workshop I've been attending. She's a teacher. Rebecca shook my hand firmly. Mrs. Chandler, Marcus talks about you constantly. I'm so glad to finally meet you. I liked her immediately. She had a groundedness that Jennifer had never possessed. After brunch, when Marcus went to get the car, Rebecca stayed back for a moment. I know what he did, she said quietly. He told me everything. The debt, the house, the competency hearing, all of it. He didn't try to hide any of it or make excuses. She paused. I just wanted you to know that the Marcus I know is someone who owns his mistakes and works every day to be better. I wouldn't be with him if he wasn't. I appreciated her honesty. Thank you for telling me that, I said. Take care of him, but more importantly, make sure he takes care of you. He needs to learn that relationships are partnerships, not transactions. That night, Patricia called. So, the new girlfriend? What do you think? I surprised myself by saying, I think she's good for him. She's grounded, she doesn't enable him, and he seems genuinely happy, not fake happy like he was with Jennifer. Patricia laughed. Dorothy Chandler, you're getting soft in your old age. I laughed too. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just choosing what's worth being hard about. Marcus is trying, really trying. That's enough for now. Patricia agreed, and we talked about other things, normal things, like we used to before all of this started. In August, Marcus called me with exciting news. Mom, I paid off the last of the high-interest debt. The loan sharks, the worst credit cards, all of it. I still have the mortgage and some lower-interest loans, but the emergency is over. I'm in the black for the first time in 5 years. The pride in his voice was palpable. That's wonderful, Marcus, I said, and I meant it. How does it feel? He laughed. Terrifying, actually. Like I don't know how to exist without crisis. But also amazing. I have a savings account now, Mom. It only has $200 in it, but it's mine. I earned it. Nobody gave it to me. We celebrated with dinner at my house. I cooked Robert's famous pot roast, the one Marcus had loved as a child. Rebecca came too, and the 3 of us sat around the table that had seen so much pain and so much healing. I want to say something, Marcus said as we finished eating. He looked nervous. Mom, I know I can never fully make up for what I did, but I want to try anyway. I'm establishing a fund in Dad's name through the company. Part of my commission from every client goes into it. When it reaches $50,000, I'm donating it to elder abuse prevention programs. It's not enough, but it's something. I felt tears in my eyes. Marcus, you don't have to do that. He shook his head. Yes, I do. Not to earn your forgiveness. That's not something I can buy. But because it's right. Because maybe helping other families avoid what we went through will give some meaning to all the pain. Rebecca squeezed his hand, proud of him. And I realized something in that moment. This was who my son really was. Not the entitled, desperate man who'd tried to steal my house, but this person who'd been buried under years of poor choices and was finally digging himself out. Christmas that year was the first real Christmas we'd had in a decade. Marcus and Rebecca came over on Christmas Eve. We decorated my tree together, drank hot chocolate, and watched old movies. Marcus found the ornament he'd made in 3rd grade, a lopsided star with his school photo glued to the center. "I can't believe you still have this," he said, smiling. "I kept everything," I told him. "Even in the worst moments, I never stopped being your mother. I just forgot for a while that being a mother doesn't mean accepting everything. Sometimes it means demanding better." On Christmas morning, Marcus gave me a gift. It was a photo album he'd put together, filled with pictures from his childhood. Me holding him as a baby, his dad teaching him to ride a bike, family vacations and birthday parties and ordinary moments that had meant everything. On the last page was a letter in his handwriting. "Mom, these are the moments that mattered. Not the money, not the house, not any of the things I tried to take from you. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I love you, Marcus." I gave him something too. Not money, but a key. "What's this?" he asked. "It's to the beach house," I said. "The one you sold." "I got it back, remember?" He nodded, confused. "I'm not giving it to you," I clarified. "But you and Rebecca can use it whenever you want. All I ask is that you take care of it and remember what it represents. Family. Real family. Not the transaction version you were operating with before." He hugged me tight. "I'll take care of it, Mom. I promise." And I believed him. In February, 1 year after that door slammed in my face, Marcus asked if we could go for a walk. We went to the park where I used to take him as a child, the same park where I'd scattered some of Robert's ashes. We sat on a bench overlooking the pond. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen until I'm done." I nodded. "Okay." He took a deep breath. "I know what you did. Buying my company, buying Jennifer's father's stores, the whole thing. For a while I was angry about it. I felt manipulated and controlled. But I've been thinking a lot about it in therapy," he continued. "And I realized something. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could have given me. You gave me consequences. Real consequences. Not the fake kind where someone bails you out or makes excuses. You let me fail. You let me feel what it was like to hit bottom. And that's the only reason I'm sitting here right now as a better person. If you'd just forgiven me and given me money to solve my problems, I'd still be that entitled, ungrateful person who valued property over people." He turned to look at me. "So thank you. Thank you for being strong enough to let me suffer. Thank you for not rescuing me when I didn't deserve rescuing. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't mean enabling. It means demanding better. You saved my life by refusing to save me from myself." I couldn't speak. Tears were running down my face. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment when I knew for certain that the change was real and lasting. My son understood. Finally, truly understood. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to do what you did if I ever have kids," he said. "Watching someone you love struggle, knowing you could help but choosing not to because it's what they need, that's the hardest kind of love, but it's the most important kind." He wiped his own eyes. "I'm proud to be your son, Mom. Not because of the money or the inheritance or any of that, but because you taught me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. That's the inheritance that matters." We sat there for a long time, watching the ducks on the pond, not needing to say anything else. Everything that needed to be said had been said. The past year had been the hardest of both our lives, but also the most transformative. I'd found strength I didn't know I had. Marcus had found character he'd buried under years of poor choices. And together, we'd found our way back to each other, not as the mother and son we'd been, but as two adults who chose to love and respect each other. Today, 2 years after that door slammed, Marcus is thriving. He made partner at the firm. He and Rebecca got married last spring, and I walked him down the aisle, just the two of us, the way it should have been at his first wedding. He's completely debt-free and has started investing for his future. He volunteers at the Financial Literacy Center where he met Rebecca, teaching other people how to dig themselves out of the holes he once inhabited. He calls me 3 times a week, not because he needs anything, but because he wants to hear my voice. As for me, I'm living the life Uncle Bernard wanted me to live. I travel when I want. I support causes I believe in. I've funded 3 shelters for elder abuse victims and a scholarship program for non-traditional students going back to school. I spend time with people who value me, not people who use me. And yes, I have a relationship with my son, but it's built on the foundation I demanded: respect, honesty, effort. Not money, not obligation, not guilt. Just 2 people choosing each other every day. Patricia asks me sometimes if I regret how I handled it, if I wish I'd just forgiven Marcus immediately and moved on. The answer is no. What happened needed to happen. Marcus needed to be broken down before he could be rebuilt. I needed to find my own strength before I could offer it to anyone else. We both needed to learn that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just enabling dressed up in pretty words. The hardest thing I ever did was walk away from my son when he was drowning. The best thing I ever did was teach him how to swim. That's my story. What do you think? Would you have done the same? Or would you have forgiven him right away and risked him never changing? Leave me a comment with your thoughts. And if this story moved you, give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I have so many more stories like this one to share with you. Stories about strength, about family, about learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to make someone's life easy. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.